Perkins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate but for the record, we don't have the minutes yet of the committee meeting. My recollection of the answer to my question was with respect to my question of PCO, was there anyone in the room that objected to her appointment because of the conflict of interest? And the officials actually said they went back and checked the record, i.e. the minutes, and the minutes don't reflect that detail of the conversation. She did not say there were minutes. There are minutes. That's what she said. She said that we didn't keep minutes of whether or not somebody objected. So there are minutes, there are records of the meetings. So, no, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. So my only response is I think part of the understanding of the process is to understand what the minutes reflect in the decision-making process and discussion that happened around the replacement of Jim Balsillie as the chair with a new chair on fairly short notice, and that we've had a lot, as I said earlier, a lot of conversation around, was it 10, was it less than 10, was it 6, was it 2? And the minutes combined with the letter, combined with the other testimony is what we need to get to the bottom of it. So personally, I think we need all three. And with regard to the tabling in the House, as MP Cooper said, again, just for the record, those documents have not been tabled with the House. They're in the process. Many of them have been redacted, contrary to the House order, so there will be issues about that when the House comes back. So to say that these documents are available now, I would love the clerk to call the law clerk and say, give us these documents and share them with the committee. And I'm pretty certain I know the law clerk will say, I don't have those documents as you asked for, unredacted. I may not even have the documents at all. Because I do know in the response from SDTC, they're still in the process of providing the law clerk with documents. They have not provided the clerk with all of the documents. And PCO gave guidance to redact, contrary to the House order. So I suspect PCO has redacted their own documents that they've given to the House, which won't tell us what it is that we're looking for. These are unredacted documents that we're looking for here to ensure that we understand where the truth lies in this sordid tale.
Thank you. I have Mr. Desjardins, and then after that, Ms. Khalid. Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to just thank my colleagues for this discussion. Mr. Perkins, thanks for your clarification. That was part of my questioning as well as in response to the motion. I do know that we just heard from one of the witnesses that some of these documents were made available, but your explanation here explains that there are still some outstanding questions, and I think it is incumbent on our committee to try to answer as many questions that members possibly have. And should any of the members' questions be answered, including mine, by way of this production of documents, I'm happy to support it. I think to the argument of Ms. Khalid regarding the striking or amendment of B, if in fact there are no documents to produce within the motion as originally stated, there will be no documents to review. If, however, we sustain B, keep B in there, and there are one or two documents to reveal the facts related to Mr. Perkins' question as to who was in the room and whether or not they left, etc., those kinds of details, I think they're important. And so for those purposes, I do agree with their original motion unamended, and I think it serves both points, including the points made by way of the amendment presented by Ms. Khalid. So I really do think that we should, if we can, get to a vote on this. I think it's a regular vote. I hope it's uncontroversial in the sense that at the very basic level and foundation of all of our work, our job is to make sure that we have all evidence that we can possibly achieve for the purpose of our study. And Mr. Perkins' motion serves that end. And to that, I agree. And so I'm happy to go to a vote if, Chair, you see that as important at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. Before that, we have Ms. Khalid has the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I do want to just correct the record. The PCO officials said that the minutes were transitory records and wouldn't exist at this point, so that's why they haven't been provided to the House. So I, again, want to go back to my point to say, if we know and have been told that something does not exist, what's the point of asking for it? Are we trying to make a political statement, or are we trying to fix an issue that we have identified here? And what would be the purpose of getting these records? I'm still trying to figure this out. I mean, we've had a lot of meetings on this, and like to Mr. Desjardins' point, he wants to get back to our study. Well, what's the purpose of this study at this point? We have brought in so many broad-ranging issues into this, where I think not just myself, but a lot of members on this committee have kind of lost focus as to why we're doing what we're doing here. The original point, and I will reiterate, is for us to make sure that taxpayer dollars are being used effectively, efficiently for Canadians. And if that's not happening, how do we make sure that that happens? And we're looking at SDTC to figure out what has happened. And we know that as soon as the minister realized wrongdoing, he took action right away. And we are continuing down this path to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And in fact, I'm looking forward to debating Mr. Perkins' motion, which hopefully we'll do before time runs out in this committee, on what are the next steps. So production of documents which are already available in the House to all members, but will be, Mr. Perkins, and then asking, knowing that those documents don't exist, asking for further documents of meeting minutes, informal meeting minutes, that we know and have been confirmed by PCO officials that they don't exist. I'm really not sure how that helps us further this study at all. So I do hope that members will support my amendment to strike what is blatantly obvious, what we've already been told by PCO officials, that these transient minutes, scribbles on a notebook or whatever they may be, do not exist. So why are we asking for them? Other than, I don't know what kind of political advantage anybody would be able to gain from them. So again, I would encourage members to say, look, let's be efficient. Let's focus on what is important here. And let's ensure that we're trying to find positive solutions to what needs to be done to make sure that public dollar is used efficiently and effectively, and where there are issues, where there are challenges, where there is wrongdoing, that is corrected immediately and efficiently. Is this going to get us do that? No. So I would again, to my point, tell members this amendment is necessary for efficiency, to make sure that we're not going down rabbit holes that take us away from the main focus of what this study is about, and that is improving efficiency and transparency within the SDTC and within government institutions. And I will park my comments there. I'm not sure who else is speaking next. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I do have a list. Mr. Desjardins, I see your hand went up first. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just responding to the amendment by Ms. Khalid is related to B. I understand the issue related to the potential that no documents could be produced in relation to that because of the witness's comments of the transitory nature of minutes. It's my understanding that there will, of course, be some minutes made available, at the very least. Transitory file policy within the Government of Canada determinant on a particular type of document can exist for up to 7 years. And so, it's not like it was 2 months or 1 month. Some documents could, depending on their nature of information, although being declared transitory may be within a longer transitory policy period, up to 7 years. And so they may not be destroyed, is I think what is the other interpretation of what the witness said, that they may be destroyed. Yes, that is in fact a true statement, but they may also not be. And so for the scoping purposes of the motion, which is what I often bring up in these committees, is I always endeavor to try to ensure that we have the greatest scope of when it comes to the secondment of documents, but it's towards a very narrow ends. And if that narrow ends is to ensure that we get all pertinent information related to how conflict of interest, particularly if the appointment process takes place, and if there's outstanding questions that members have, I do believe it is a good inclusion within the original motion. And so I just wanted to speak to the comment on whether or not they may or may not exist and the nature of transitory files. So that for that reason, I think the motion unamended is a good motion. And if there is no documents related to Section B, then there'll be no documents supplied. And so I think that's as simple as I can make it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bradford, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's no question that this matter before us regarding SDTC is important to all of us. It's important to the Public Accounts Committee and all the members here, regardless of our political persuasion. We do want to understand what went wrong in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And that's the point of our whole study. It's kind of, again, to review the AG's report on this matter, which identified problems, which we're delving into. So, however, having said that, I must say that with all due respect to Mr. Perkins, I'm perplexed about the necessity or relevance of this additional motion. I don't really understand why we're asking for things that have already been provided to the House, that all parliamentarians will have access to, and other documents that we've been told don't exist. So neither one of those parts of the motion seem to accomplish or add anything additional or further to advance our discussion and study of this topic. So that's my particular feeling on the matter, and I just don't really see. I think the seriousness and the importance of this study has been demonstrated clearly by this committee by the motion that we passed just the day before yesterday, where we've agreed to bring in 30 additional witnesses before this committee that probably may have some new important information to add so we can hear their perspective of what happened and how they were involved. I think that clearly demonstrates that we at this committee take this, or certainly on our side of the House, I think on all sides, take this very, very seriously. And I think that's a relevant exercise and a good use of our time. But these committee meetings are expensive, and I just don't see why we spend so much time debating motions that aren't really going to advance the discussion and the study further. They're dealing with either documents that we've been told don't exist or that have been previously provided to the House. Thank you.
Thank you. Suivant, c'est Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, s'il vous plaît.
Next up, we have Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés. Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to talk about the motion. We're talking about the amendment right now, I realize. I am surprisingly in agreement with Mr. Desjardins. I think the original motion makes more sense because these documents could help to answer questions that are legitimate. So I would also like to be able to move to a vote as quickly as possible and not to incur any delays with this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clerk, please call the roll call on the amendment to the motion. Voting yes signals members would like to strike B in the motion. Voting no signals members would like to keep the motion as was presented by MP Perkins. Over to you, Clerk.
Ms. Bradford.
Oui.
Ms. Khalid.
Yes.
Ms. Effner.
In favor.
Mr. Weiler.
En faveur.
Ms. Yip.
Yes.
Mr. Perkins.
No.
Mr. Cooper.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Madame Sinclair Desgagnés.
Non.
Mr. Desjardins.
No. Against?
Five yeas, 5 nays.
Thank you. The amendment to the motion is defeated. I'm going back to the list now. It's to Mr. Desjardins. But before I turn to you, Mr. Desjardins, Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés, est-ce que votre main est levée pour...
Did you raise your hand to speak again to the motion, Ms. Sinclair-Desgagnés? No? Very well.
Have the floor. And because I know there are many caucuses meeting next week, I am requesting extra time for this afternoon to get through this in the business at hand. So, Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor to speak to the motion. To speak to the motion as was tabled by Mr. Perkins in its entirety. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks again to my colleagues. Of course, it's not always my preference when we dispute on matters of the documents or evidence secondment, particularly in this case. I do take note from my colleagues, my Liberal colleagues, their concerns. I also hope that we can all see that this is an order for the production of information. It is relevant to our study. Information is important. More evidence is what our job is to get in this kind of committee to best inform what will be a report related to the very serious nature of SDTC. I hope we can process this in an orderly and quick fashion and get on to some other business of the day. And so I'd ask for my colleagues' support in attempting to get this to a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. I have Ms. Yip speaking next. You have the floor, Ms. Yip.
Thank you. I'd like to move an amendment to replace the 7 days with 3 weeks, just because 7 days is a short amount of time, and the regular process for production is a minimum of 3 weeks across all committees. And I don't think it's quite fair for members to request these documents in such a short time span. Standard of 3 weeks really should be respected, both to ensure nothing is missed, translation is adequately conducted, and the committee stands by its precedent on this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yip. I have an amendment to the motion to change the time from 7 to 21 days. That's calendar days. Mr. Perkins, you have the floor.
I just point out the contradiction of MP Yip, who said the House already has them, so they should be able to produce them and wouldn't need 3 weeks if the House already has them.
Thank you very much. Clerk, could you call a vote on the amendment to the motion? Voting yes signals members would like to extend the deadline to 21 calendar days. Voting no signals the motion will remain as is with a 7-day deadline. Over to you, Clerk.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Ms. Khalid. Yes. Ms. Hefner.
En faveur.
Mr. Weiler.
Favor.
Ms. Yip.
Favor.
Oui.
Mr. Perkins.
No.
Mr. Cooper.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés.
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins.
No.
Six yeas, 4 nays.
Very good. The amendment is passed. The motion is amended with a response time of 3 weeks from today. I'll now turn back to the motion as amended. Clerk, please call. Go ahead, Ms. Khalid.
I'm just wondering, you said the motion as amended. I'm just wondering what the amendment was.
It was your colleague's amendment to extend the timeline from 7 days to 3 weeks, 21 days.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Call the vote, Clerk, on the motion as amended.
Ms. Bradford.
No.
Ms. Khalid.
No.
Ms. Hefner.
No.
Mr. Weiler.
Contre.
Miss Yip,
No.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brock,
Yes.
Madame Sinclair Desgagnés,
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins,
Yes.
5 yeas, 5 nays.
The motion as amended is passed. Thank you. I'm now going to just suspend for 5 minutes before we come back for committee business. So we'll see you all back here in 5 minutes. This meeting is suspended.